From the Dallas On Air studios in beautiful Dallas, Texas, this is Fulfillment right here on DallasOnAir.com. And now here's your host, the Vegabomber, PJ Dunn.
Welcome everybody to That Film Show. You know, that special film show where we talk about movies, we talk about the directors, we talk about the script, we'll talk about anything that has anything to do with movies, and we might even collect some of the DVDs. We might even collect some of the any of the paraphernalia that comes with us whenever we go to the special screenings where they give you little passes or posters or those little 18 by 18 publicity posters. We just collect it all because we just love movies. And so today I'm joined with a special guest, and my special guest today, I've seen him already. This is our third hour internment here, but it's still good and it's still full of energy. It's Jedi Cole Houston.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Morning. I don't know. I've been
Where
here
are
so
we?
long.
Yeah. We're just in the green room.
I
That's
know.
all we know.
All I see is the green walls. I haven't seen
Now
the
you
sun.
know how I feel, having me trapped here for the rant court pit.
That's right.
And that voice behind the camera, and sometimes we'll put him on the camera, that's no other than Kazak.
Greetings and salutations, campers. Welcome to DallasOnAir.com.
Yes, so
Do you talk about the best boys at all?
the best boys?
Yeah.
Who are
Key
those?
grips and
Oh, the gaffers? No,
Yeah, exactly.
we leave those folks
You-
out, you
they
know.
just never get any good coverage.
They just don't, you know. They always show up at the very end of the movie anyway, right? So that's what we see those guys. Well,
But I will share with you a little trick. This is something that my wife Catherine and I do, and it becomes a challenge. But I started doing this, and it kind of caught on between us. I'm trying to spread this. Is to, when you're watching the credits at the end of a movie, you're like me, you just sit through the whole thing, even if there's not something there for you. Watch for quotation names. You might see, like, you know, Key Grip, Buddy, Mike
Mhm.
Anderson. Like, why is he called Mike? But there's almost no film that I've seen in the last 10 years
Yeah.
has been absent somewhere in the credits
Mm-hmm.
a quotation name.
Somebody's nickname.
So you become obsessed about it. I want people to do that. I want you to, now that we're getting back into the cinema, I want people to start looking for quotation names.
That's right. So John Johnston. Whenever
Yeah.
you see the John in quotes, that might tell you something. It's Triple J.
It could be.
So we have those
for
people.
example, PJ Vegabomber.
We're done. Oh,
Dunn,
how
or
about that?
Cole,
That's part of
Jedi
it.
Cole Houston. If we were in film,
Yeah.
Kazak.
Yeah. Dark Lord, Talk Lord of the. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
we could
watch
do
for
this.
those because it's a fun little game. It's actually completely stupid, but it's kind of fun to see if they're there. And I get really upset if I don't get my quotation name.
Well, there you have it. That game's new and it's free and
That's
it's
right.
fun. So go watch a movie now and just skip the movie. Just skip
Yeah,
the
just
movie.
go
Go
straight
straight,
to the
to the credits and then see if you can find what's a nickname that somebody has or
Download this,
something's in quote.
this game into your brain.
There it is.
If only somebody had told me that when I was forced to go see Serendipity. I'm just saying.
Oh,
Just saying.
Well, they take a little of the edge off the end, you know.
If only I'd gotten that when they had Pursuit of Happiness. Just,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, so if Marvel hasn't trained us to wait to watch to see these special scenes.
After Earth, was that the one?
So I noticed that there was one of the things I would watch in the credits is I used to watch because of my history with music and being in a band. Is I used to love to see which bands, which songs, which albums they took from that they put that I recognized in the movie.
Yes.
So that was always fun to see. And if they used the real version or did they use a knockoff version of that particular song from somebody, you know, so that
Somebody
was always
else's
fun.
cover versus
Yeah,
the
someone's
original.
cover version of I Love It Loud instead of Kiss, it's
Because it
somebody
was
else.
$10,000 cheaper to use that version than.
Absolutely. It was on KTEL. Buy this with 1 penny and get 10 cassettes. Right?
No, my brother, you got to get your own.
You got to get your own. That is the commercial, buddy.
Well, the things you learn from watching House Party. I'm just saying.
Yes, you
For
got
all
to
the
watch
old
House
people
Party.
in the
All three of
audience who
them.
remember Hit Machine by KTEL.
KTEL, yes. Do tell by KTEL, I pray tell.
Very nice.
Well, we're looking at, just for you folks today watching in, you know that what we do is we start off with the Just Seen It segment, and then we do our main topic of the day. And when we do our Just Seen It, it just kind of gives you an idea of what we watch in between shows. So that way you can tell if we're sane or not, but you can tell that by what we're watching. And so let's just jump into that first one, the Just Seen It today. There it is. My wiki. And I'm going to start with the Jedi Cole himself. So, what have you watched in the last 2 weeks or so?
Well, I think my most recent have not seen, to my detriment, much in the cinema in a while, and I'm very anxious to get back to that. Got my first rabies vaccine.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
And the thing is, I'd been to the movies like a couple of months ago before I even was invited to get a vaccine. But it's just been a while since I've been able to carve out a little bit of time to go see something in the theater. And very happy that Alamo Drafthouse Dallas franchise is still going to be around. I lament the loss of the originals.
Yeah.
But I do watch. We got hooked on Disney Plus.
Okay, here it comes.
You know, and
here it comes.
We've been diligently watching. It's like every Friday, it'd be like all during the week. I wish it was Friday. Then Friday, we're like, wait, it's Friday. How did that sneak in? And of course, right now the big Friday obsession is the Falcon and the Winter. Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
It is.
Oh my. I had to keep very tight lips at a family event yesterday because my brother has not yet seen the latest episode. It's like, you're going to not know this yet. So this has been just gangbusters. We devoured WandaVision. The haters out there just don't get it. And
it happens.
Frankly, don't deserve to get it.
Yeah. And this series, because I've been watching it too, and this one kind of goes back into it goes more back into the more traditional Marvel franchise stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's got everything you expect in a Marvel cinematic film, which is action and adventure, amazing special effects. And the thing is, Disney's like John Hammond. They spared no expense. I mean, these are cinema quality productions. They didn't just like, oh, this is the television arm. They get like less money. And on top of that, it also has inexplicable plot lines.
Okay.
So like any good Marvel movie, there's stuff in the plot that it's chock full of plot holes, but it's okay. You want that.
Sure.
You know, you don't have time for anything to make too much sense. But one of the things that impressed me from the outset is unexpected cameos, and that has continued throughout, where the deeper connection to the Marvel Universe, the cinematic universe, is cemented over several different episodes. In much the same way as when they had Samuel L. Jackson appear in one of the early episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Just so you had that hook. You know, this isn't just S.H.I.E.L.D., but no, this is this S.H.I.E.L.D., not that S.H.I.E.L.D. No, this is everybody's S.H.I.E.L.D., mother. But, you know, I like that fact that Disney is very shrewd about the fact that they have built this universe very methodically. And they're not abandoning it, even to the point where they finally have apparently done what they swore was never going to happen, and deepened the connection with the Netflix. Reportedly, Charlie Cox, about a month or two ago, wrapped his contribution to Spider-Man Homeboy or whatever the
Home Alone, Homeboy, Home Spidey, Home Depot Spidey.
That's right.
It's all.
It has home in it, but I could never remember the title.
Home Alone is just
the whole time.
He gets bitten by the spider. So,
and the Home Depot one is him just running around the whole store, hitting the guys with the hammers and nails and all the other stuff.
Battle with just grabbing whatever's on the shelf. He hit Alan with an Allen wrench.
Yes.
Not a formidable weapon, by the way. The Allen wrench is just rather. You'd be better off getting like a big Venusian monkey wrench. Like
Now, is that Allen with the 2 A's or Allen with an A and an E?
But yeah, you really got to appreciate the way that the guys who love Marvel have really kind of dug in deep on the details on this, because you know, as a casual Marvel Cinematic Universe fan and not so much a comic book guy, going in and doing the detailed Google searches on who these characters are,
Yeah.
It's an education.
Oh, in fact, in the latest episode, I've got to
Totally.
do a Google search to make sure
Yeah.
that I know who somebody is. But you do continue to get established characters, even characters that didn't have a huge role,
Yep.
recurring. And it's saying, you know, there is a thread running through this
Wow.
that
Okay.
continues. And I love that. From referential, like they did in a lot of the Netflix stuff, where they would talk about the attack on New York and things like that, to just bringing a guy on you haven't seen since one movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazingly cool. And the show is delivering. It's giving you all of the drama and the action and the interplay, you know, to combine, to have Falcon and Winter Soldier, who in the comics have the connection of both being Captain Americas.
Yeah. That's
At
true.
some point in their career, each of them has been Captain America. And that pairing is wonderful. And then to take the characterization that we've had in the film and mix those two up one-on-one in a way that they've never been within the Avengers.
Yeah.
And you get this wonderful odd couple dynamic.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I got to admit, when they were coming up with the promo material for it, I don't know if I was on board. Like, oh, great, a buddy comedy. This is not what we want.
Yeah.
But it works. The dynamic between Sebastian Stan and
Anthony Mackie.
Anthony
Anthony
Mackie.
Mackie, yeah.
It's been really wonderful.
Well, I'll tell you what I would like to see. Now, of course, I haven't had a chance to watch any of it yet, but I tell you, the thing I really want to see is to see if they'll tie it back to Black Panther, because there's in the comics, Black Panther builds Falcon some wings.
Well, and
Right.
also in the
So I hope
cinematic
that-
universe, Wakanda took Bucky on and gave him a new arm and helped deprogram him. So there's that strong Wakandan connection that can't be ignored
Oh,
or
Right.
shouldn't be ignored.
and it's not.
It's not ignored.
We can say that it's not.
Cool.
Safely. So
Yeah,
when
no,
you're-
that's very good. That's what I want to know.
Once you get into episodes 3 and 4, you really see how strongly that tie
And in
goes.
fact, when that connection is invoked, I'm like, well, duh.
Yeah.
Of course he's got a connection to Wakanda. Why did I not? I mean, I should have been like you, demanding it at the outset. And it slipped my dulled mind somehow.
Well, and then, in the comic books, Black Panther and Captain America fought each other. So if you're going
Yeah.
to bring Captain America into it at all, which I'm sure they are, then I would definitely love to see how they might reimagine that, because it would have been Black Panther's dad, T'Chaka, who had fought Captain America. And so that would be kind of cool if they kind of show what that was about, right? So that'd be kind of neat,
Well, I also love the fact that they pay so much tribute. You've got a cumulative, arguable 80 years of Marvel comics. They weren't always Marvel. It's sort of tenuous. Every time I see some fancy sounding modern sounding company name, they say, since 1810. I doubt that was your name in 1810. You're probably the conglomerated something or other, and then about 1900 changed into this really cool name. But I'll give you that you still. So
Sure.
with that kind of vast history, and then the inevitable retconning, where you force history into a history you didn't already have, and they've done that in the cinematic universe.
Oh, yeah.
With Ant-Man, for example.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, by the way, I was Ant-Man a while back, and nobody talked about it until it was talked about.
Yeah.
But they get away with that. I'm hoping that in Black Widow coming up, that there might be something of the Soviet super soldiers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that would be a fun thing to discover.
Yeah.
And they could do it in the same way as Ant-Man. It was all just this secret Cold War background. It wasn't out in the open like the Avengers. And but you get a little bit of the Captain America history
Yeah.
that was retconned in within the context of this narrative. So it really is. Disney Plus is doing an amazing job. Disney is doing an amazing job with the Marvel license. All of the fanboys who were just pissing and moaning 15 years ago, or 12 to 15 years ago, have all fallen silent, because Disney has proven that once they get their hands on something, they want to make money with it.
Well, that
And
was
they're-
never in question, actually.
Well, I think a lot of people were worried that all of a sudden Marvel Comics
Mhm.
were going to be all Mickey Mouse, and like,
Mhm.
no, they know how to acquire something that's worth acquiring, and then step back and let it be what it always was.
Yeah, that's another show. We can talk about
Oh,
that.
yeah.
There's a lot there.
There's
a lot to
there.
unpack there.
Yes.
And we're going to get into that another time.
That's
another
right.
time.
So we will leave that with, if you haven't seen it, check out
Yeah.
Yeah.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because it's
Yeah, no, it's one of the ones I
It,
want.
it will not disappoint you.
no, it
Yeah.
is a fine thing.
How about you, Zach? What have you been watching?
All right, so whereas Cole's gone to something new, I have gone to something old, and with something old, I get to bring out the newest retread from Shudder, and that is season 3 of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. Oh, I'm so happy that this has returned. Again, you get a look at every Friday night. You get a double feature of 2 iconic or infamous films. We started off really strong with 2 interesting picks. We were getting this first episode, both movies co-hosted by Eli Roth. Eli Roth, of course, the director of stuff like Cabin Fever, House of Clock in its Walls, Hostel, things like that. You can say what you will about him being a director. There's a lot to not dig about Eli
Sure.
Roth. That's fine. But what he is also is he is a horror movie fan and a horror movie historian. He's also the host of History of Horror on AMC. But what he does is he offers his insight into 2 of his favorite films, the films that we got to watch from 1981, Mother's Day, which is a wonderful, traumatizing run from hillbillies in the 80s. Just wonderful gore. Terror. Three girls on a camping trip getting their revenge on backwoods guys who kidnapped them. Just fantastic, terrible.
Okay.
The other one that we get is The House by the Cemetery. House by the Cemetery, a Lucio Fulci, Italian romp through the undead, which again, just wonderful, just gore and terror and things like that. Everything good Italian giallo. And if you dig that sort of thing, this is the kind of film for you. But what you're getting really is with this particular episode with Joe Bob and Eli, just kind of exploring the history of it, exploring the impact of it, exploring how the film is made, just all those little bites and things like that. That if you enjoy B cinema, getting that insight of it, getting to hear the stories of it, getting to see how it's influenced guys like Eli Roth, who are still doing horror and still collecting horror and still carrying the flag for it as real serious filmmaking.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's why I'm a guy who really, really digs on Joe Bob's Last Drive-In, because it celebrates, the little minutia. It celebrates, these little bitty films that got no release that just should be enjoyed for what they are, which, we enjoy terrible films. I enjoy terrible films, and these are terrible films, but they're so, but they're so interestingly well made, and so many great stories that come out of it that, it's, you don't need to hear 10,000 times how great the ship was sinking in the Titanic was, but I can hear over and over again the joy of working with someone like working with just some of these B actors who never got seen again, because again, there's just tremendous stories out of these films. So, like I said, it's filmmaking worth celebrating.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So
And I think probably for the unindoctrinated, it's a wonderful way to discover through those stories how amazing these films are.
Yeah, because again, these are films that I've not seen, that I've not ever seen, and I wouldn't watch it in any other context. But this, I'm totally on board with it.
Yeah. Well, with that, what I ended up watching is probably the film that everybody's been kind of talking about in a sense to a big degree, because we've been waiting for that one movie that was going to be the big blockbuster this year, since COVID has kind of done its best to kind of make the attendances at these movies pretty meek and meager. But it was Godzilla versus Kong. So it's going to be a kaiju movie that's going to have to bring the money back in. And so I did. I saw it both in the theater, and I saw it at one of the nice Atmos theaters that AMC has. And then, of course, I saw it for a second time at home. So I can definitely tell you that you lose a lot if you're just watching it at home on your home theater system, even if you have a nice sound bar and rear speakers and all that. There's just something about seeing the big giant monsters on a giant screen. The scale is just too perfect to see it there. So I can say that the movie itself probably plays pretty well. I would say that this is a movie that's pretty entertaining. So it's entertaining. It's not the best story. It's not the best plot or anything like that. There's stuff in it you're going, why did you even bring that up? There's just some stuff that it's just ridiculous. But you know that the reason why you're going to the film is to see the monsters in the first place. So they give you that. You definitely have some different angles shot, the color that's used, whenever Godzilla lights up, gets ready to blow that charge, the way his eyes light up as well, and not just the fins on his back. And then just the way they backed up from a cinematography perspective, so that you could see both of them on the screen at the same time to get a sense of when they're swinging and punching. What I hate in movies sometimes, and you'll see this in really bad movies with bad choreography, and fight choreography I'm talking about, is when they pull in so close, you can't tell what these guys are doing, and they're just kind of punching each other. The example of a movie that I love that does that, I love the movie, is Batman Begins. It's too close on Batman, you can't really see, and they had to do that because his cowl couldn't turn in that first one really, so that kind of restricted his motion. But see here, I love this, and CGI, they back up so that when Kong goes to throw a haymaker, you can see his body winding up, torquing up, so that that punch is coming across that he's going to hit Godzilla with has evil intent in it. It has bad intentions in it. And I love that, because if you're going to have a fight scene, I need to see all of it. And I think that's what the Kung Fu movies, the Bruce Lee films helped us see, how to do fight choreography. You need to back up. Let us see the full kick, the turn, all of it, even the face as they're coming around. You need to be able to see the intent on the face, that this is not a fake air punch, even though it is. Right? You got to be able to sell that. So with this, you got to see that, and I wanted to see. It was like an MMA fight with the way the fights that were here in this film, and so I was thoroughly enjoying that. Like I said, the only thing is just again the humans. I don't even know why they even have them in there. Really, I think we can come up with a very simple storyline where they just fight and we will watch it. But Millie Bobby Brown and the rest of them, they're just useless. Just the stuff that they did. Her dad in the film is in the beginning of the film. At the end of the film, but your daughter's gone to Middle Earth, and you don't know where your daughter is, but yeah, there he is at the very end when she needs to go run to find somebody. When the movies are, you're just kind of like, wow, that was the best y'all could come up with.
This franchise, the modern American Godzilla films, suffer very heavily, and frankly, as an adult and even as a child watching Japanese Godzilla films, you kind of went and made a sandwich whenever the humans were on the screen.
Pretty much.
But they've never figured out a way of doing. I think they engage the audience more with the human characters in the Japanese films than these lackluster, inexplicable plots in the modern ones.
Yeah. I will say that with this one, they got more out of the way than they did in Godzilla King of the Monsters, because then they were just directly in your way. They're just a pain in the ass. With this one, they learned their lesson in the fact that they brighten up the landscapes so you can see everything. You finally got, like I said, you got some decent combat. And yeah, I think that you finally made a way to put the humans in danger. That finally kind of made sense. That they basically got out of it. They got out of the way of themselves. They got the plot out of the way. Just basically, we know why you're here. We're gonna get to this We gotta explain how we got here, and then we'll make way for it. Because again, with the first Godzilla film in this particular series, and then Godzilla King of the Monsters, it's just on and on, constant babbling about nonsense which you don't care about. Like, get to the friggin' monsters, and they finally do with this one. There's there's some really great destruction in this. And again, they do kind of back off of the humans, because you never see humans tumbling out of buildings or anything like that. So, like I said, it's a little more family friendly on this one, I think.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, it definitely was.
But yeah, with this one, yeah, it got into some really bizarre and stupid plot points.
Yeah.
Which it really didn't need, but by the same token, it did give you a break from the action. Because again, you can't have an hour and a half of kaiju fighting kaiju, but by the same token, you have at least an explanation of why the humans are there.
Yeah, and I think that's the struggle, and this is actually a show in itself that we're going to have to do on this, because I think you have to make the humans at least likable. And in this case, it was just, I didn't care about any of them because I didn't really know anything. And I was just kind of like, why do I need to know that this dude's wife died, and that's why he has this?
From the last one.
Yeah, and I was just like, okay, but at the end of the day, you're going, but how does, the question they need to ask these guys is, hey, but how does this move the story along? It doesn't. It slows it down, and that should be the whole barometer there, is that if it's going to slow the movie down, we don't need that scene. What might speed it up sooner? So, for example, I would actually argue to the other side about the first Godzilla with Bryan Cranston. The only problem with that movie for me is that they didn't show Godzilla enough, but I felt I liked the characterization of Bryan Cranston in that movie, and the fact that he eventually gets killed by Godzilla. Now, I don't like how his son, is supposed to pick up afterwards. They did a weak job on that. But the first few moments where you could see where he's upset because they don't believe him in what he's finding out of it, that I liked. I thought that was good with Bryan Cranston.
Well, it gave you some purpose for his character. It had a mission. And others are just kind of like hanging around like, well, what are we going to do? I don't know. The monsters are killing each other.
Yeah. Kaijus are moving to this area, so we need to stop them because they're predators. They're apex predators. They're going to fight. Yeah, of course they're going to fight.
Yeah, so why don't we not go there?
Yeah.
And stay out of the film while we're at it.
Yeah, but I would say all in all, though, does the film do what it needs to do? Yes. Does it give you the fights? Does it give you the kaiju? Does it give you some scenarios where you get to see kind of things realized between them? Yes. Does it go back to throwbacks to some of the older kaiju films? Yes, it does. There's a lot of nods to some scenes that happened in some of the previous fights that they'd had. So from that perspective, I'd say you're probably happy and overjoyed with it. I'd also say that it's because there's nothing else out either to really put up against. So I don't think this would be a movie you want to run back and go see it every other month or so or every other year because it was such a great film. I think it just stands out so much because there's nothing else out there really on this level, which isn't to say that this isn't an enjoyable film. I think it is, but for some of you who've been watching films a lot, you're going to get dull in some of the points because there's parts that are just, you're going, why?
It's a movie definitely worth watching on a bigger screen. I definitely hauled out the projector, put it on the back patio, put it on the big screen, put up the sound. Yeah, it like I said, because I'm not going to movie theaters yet. But it was worth hauling out all that stuff to do this.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's with me. I have not yet seen it because I haven't had a chance to go to the theater to see it.
Yeah.
Because I have been going to theaters even before vaccination and, rolling them dice. But I really, this is one I want to see on the big screen. It's sort of like, I didn't buy Avatar on home video because I was never going to recreate the experience.
Right.
There are some things that belong on the theater screen, and that's
correct.
One of them.
Yes, that's one of them for sure. Gladiators, another one, and we can go on and on and on for that for sure. So let's just leave you there, friends and fans, that these are some good films that we've talked about here that you can watch for a series. And so let's just jump into the topic du jour, the topic of the day. And so since we're already talking about kaijus, I feel like maybe we should go a little deeper. Right, we should go a little deeper with that. And so let's do that. Let's talk about, and I'm going to do that with my special guest and with Kaijus here. We're going to talk about the little bit of the history of these things. Who did it well? Why did we have so much human interference? What's the good parts of this stuff? What about the rubber suits? What about the metaphors? What were the metaphors for them? Were these really just dumb movies, or were there something actually to them? We'll start with that. And so, Cole,
Well,
remember
first
your
I want to say
Kaiju?
that thank you for inviting me to be on the show. It was last minute,
Uh-huh.
and you're like, well, "Do you want to stick around and be on the show?" I'm like, always." But then you said we're going to talk about Godzilla and Kaiju. I'm like, I'd be here all day for that. So,
Love it.
absolutely thrilled to talk about that. Amazingly, the weekend before this, weekend before last, my one of our nieces, who is I think 7 or 8, maybe 9, just got introduced to Godzilla
Okay.
and to the kaiju, and saw her yesterday, and she's running around saying, "Godzilla is my boy." So she is entrenched now. And by the
Okay.
way, absolutely hates
Okay.
King Kong, so there it is.
All right.
But Godzilla is her boy, and so it's wonderful. My nephew for my other brother, my younger brother has been into Kaiju since we were kids, so naturally he's got his son very much enamored. So I'm absolutely wonderful to be here, and I have had a love of Godzilla because you used to watch them in the Dallas area, for example, where I was growing up. Usually on, like, say, Channel 11 or
Yep.
one of the UHF
Yep.
channels,
Yep.
there would eventually be some Godzilla movie dubbed in English, be it the original or any number of other in the franchise. And it was always wonderful to see those.
Yeah.
And that's how my little brother got into that. As we watched one of the movies, they weren't showing them in release order. So we had seen one or two other movies. I think they were doing like every Saturday or whatever they were showing these movies. And then they show the Raymond Burr Americanized Gojira.
Yeah, because we start with Godzilla 1954.
Yes.
From Toho Studios.
Yep.
Where it starts is it actually starts as a ripoff of an American film, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. So, and like I said, you're coming out of the atomic age. You're coming out of these radioactive monsters that have grown to immense size, and you have movies like them, or
The MOUSs,
right.
Monsters of Unusual Size.
I don't believe they exist,
Oh.
but I mean, you get 1954, and you have, like I said, reactions to the radioactive age, and I mean, this is very, very fresh off of Hiroshima and things like that.
Nagasaki,
So,
yeah.
so you've got a whole lot of panic and things like that, and so we're now introducing them into the American audience with the Raymond Burr overdubs and things like that, which I don't think it's wholly unnecessary, but it's a good way to bring them into American houses at the time. Because again, we're not watching Kurosawa quite yet. We're not.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right.
We aren't necessarily ready for this import of culture,
Right.
even imported pop culture. So Raymond Burr gives you a name you can hang on marquees,
Perry Mason,
and you bring him in. And then
Ironside.
also, several years ago, we had the opportunity to go see Gojira with English subtitles.
Okay.
And when you see the original Japanese cut, you will discover there were reasons, there were things that were going to be excised anyway.
Yeah.
So Raymond Burr just is a filler for things like, one of the things that was most striking is the realization this was 9 years after Hiroshima, which is a tick on the clock of the time of humanity on Earth.
Sure.
And already they're going into atomic monsters. And to take that a step further, the scene where the subway train is attacked by Godzilla, the train bridge is destroyed. Leading up to that are a couple of establishing shots of passengers on the train, and one of them is having a conversation about this news of this giant monster, and she goes, "Oh well, I was in Hiroshima, so I survived Hiroshima." So I'm like, as an American, that dug very deep, because here they are addressing a massive historical point when it's still fresh in the vernacular of culture.
Yeah, I mean, was America necessarily ready to accept Japanese folks as a sympathetic protagonist?
Especially because you have a lot of people involved in World War II who are not going to be that accepting of their enemy of less than a decade ago. A decade ago, we were out to destroy these folks.
Right. Well, we had
Now
internment
we're-
camps here in America
Yeah,
where we kept
exactly. So-
Japanese people, right?
Precisely.
So there's a lot of deep history, and the actual Godzilla cuts pretty deep. There's a couple of scenes that are just like, wow, yeah, I can understand why they got rid of that. That American audiences in 59 or 54 rather were not ready for that kind of really deep, poignant. Mother gathering her children as Godzilla's coming to destroy their neighborhood, and her admonition to them, "We'll be with Father soon." It's just, dang, I don't remember that when I was watching it on Channel 11.
Well, and you had go ahead, KJ.
No, and I mean, it cut in some really, really deep, both philosophical and political and scientific standpoints. So
Yeah,
sorry.
no, you're right,
That was it.
and you talk about when you look at this. So, 1954, you're also talking about how special effects are going to eventually be changed, right? Because
Right.
you didn't do anything like this on this kind of a scale, really necessarily too much before this, and so now you've got to say, well, how would we do this? And so it's interesting how they use like toy trains and this sort of thing to try to do the best that they could with what they had at that moment.
Oh, and some often very intricate models. I mean,
Yes.
granted, once they tore down the insides, it wasn't like they put furniture and different floors and subfloors and things like that in. But it sold the idea that, between that and shots of actual actors and people running, and seeing the original black and white Godzilla after having my little brother fall in love with Godzilla, then this one comes on and we're watching it. So you can well imagine where this is heading in the third act when the oxygen destroyer is deployed. And then you get the, James Bond piranha skeletal remains all there in the effervescent waters. And Craig was inconsolably sobbing
Wow.
because here was his cinematic hero, and then we find out that they killed him at the start. It became kind of like Sherlock Holmes. How dare you? Oh well, no, he wasn't quite dead. It's like Yoda was there. There is another.
But yeah, I mean, this type of filmmaking really kind of broadened the aspect for what you could do with models and what you could do
Yes,
with
absolutely.
costumes and what you could do with advanced cinematic techniques, because these films are really kind of advanced cinema special effects.
Absolutely, it did.
And that, like I said, it was almost fascinating to watch, because you'd see the models get trashed and you're like, okay, it's the models and things like that. But for a minute there, for a split second, you kind of suspend your disbelief with some of it, because excuse me, some of it's so intricate and amazingly done that it's going to trashed in here in like 10 seconds. But it captures your eye, and it tricks you. And that's phenomenal.
Well, that, and as you say, it's a combination of so many cinematic skill sets and aspects of cinema, because you have your costuming, your special effects costuming with your monsters. These monster suits are just insane. And then you're combining that on the set with miniatures that someone meticulously built that you're just going to trample on. So it's very zen. And then you also have pyrotechnics that have to be timed perfectly. I mean, there are scenes where Godzilla's tearing stuff up and it's exploding and there's sparks flying.
Yep.
And then you've got tracers from ordnance down on the ground from the miniature tanks and stuff. And you've got
The
planes
phone
on
lines.
wires flying. It's like, good night. You know, now we just push a button and all that happens. But back then you had to get everybody in place working as a team. And then as you go forward, you know, once they killed Godzilla and realized that was not a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get into the CGI stuff and things like that, can we talk a little bit about some of Godzilla's opposition?
Oh, absolutely.
Because
I
you're
don't even wanna touch the CG yet.
because you're big into not
I-
just Godzilla but the whole panoply.
I
of-
love the entire
guys.
pantheon
Mm-hmm.
because once they realized, well, that was stupid to kill this character,
Yeah.
they rush a sequel into production, which is god awful.
Mm-hmm.
But at least it got Godzilla back out there, and then they shift into high gear,
Yep.
and they start not only building the Godzilla verse, as it were, but you know, Godzilla's off fighting his, and then you have other character types. You get a whole feature film about King Ghidorah coming to Earth to mess with everybody.
And Mothra.
Well, and then Mothra gets a feature film, and then you have other films that didn't join up,
Mm-hmm.
like the Gargantuans.
Mm-hmm. Gamera, the turtle.
But yeah, Gamera,
Mm-hmm.
and I think was Gamera not Toho? Is that why?
Yeah, it was not Toho.
Yeah, that's why we didn't get a connection there.
Mhm.
But you did have aspects of things like the from these other movies, like the oh, what's the other one I was thinking of? The like the space amoeba and
Yeah.
a few other of these kaiju films where they took Frankenstein destroys the Earth or something like
Mhm.
rules the Earth. One of the two, where the Mongoloid kid, for reasons, grows 190 feet tall
Yeah.
and runs around in a loincloth destroying everything, and then has to fight Baragon, who then gets introduced into.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we're not going to waste the suit. We spent hundreds of thousands of yen, and by God, we're going to, I mean, at one point, the Godzilla suit was repurposed for an episode of Ultraman,
Mm-hmm.
where they just added like these big funky spikes and horns and stuff. Like, oh no, that's not Godzilla. Look over here. Look over here. It's not Godzilla.
That's not Clark Kent. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
Superman. I know he's got glasses on, but that's not
That's
Superman.
not Superman. Oh, that's yeah. It was basically
That's Clark
Godzilla
Kent.
with glasses.
But yeah, they get into such intense puppetry and costuming and things like that.
Yeah.
That it's remarkable what they're able to accomplish. And as the cinematic techniques get better, so do the suits.
Yes.
So does the modeling. So does the puppetry.
Yeah.
Well, and like say the Godzilla, you start out with this kind of almost comical pug face. He's like a Chinese dragon,
Mm-hmm.
and he's very actually the original Godzilla is much more approachable than later ones where he becomes more dinosaur-like. He always has the thunder thighs.
Mm-hmm.
He's always got his stumpy little arms and his like basketball skin,
Mm-hmm.
but he's like ruffles. He has ridges.
Mm-hmm.
And the big dorsal fins, which was a amazing design choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
With those crenulated dorsal fins. But you start out with an almost comical Godzilla that allows you to do things like, I can't remember which of the films, but he and I think his little buddy Anguillus
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation which is subtitled.
Yeah. That's funny.
They're like,
Yeah. Little sounds. Well, it's
and,
true.
And I could talk all day about Anguirus. I love the fact that the Japanese were unabashed about having a guy crawling on his hands and knees.
Yeah.
You know, here's this prehistoric monster that looks like a guy crawling on his hands and knees. And they did the same thing with Gamera, where they had a character, Giron, who I have an actual Bandai Giron hollow vinyl figure from Japan, and they don't pull any punches. It looks like a guy on his hands and knees. And at one point I once owned the Bandai King Kong from their Godzilla line.
Right.
They didn't try to improve on the god awful look of Toho's King Kong suit with that dopey.
The dope.
They sort of like punch drunk face. And
Well, most of this, like in the West before, when you were trying to do animals like this, it'd be like stop motion. That's what they
Yes.
use. So when you think of the King Kong movies and Mighty Joe Young and that sort of stuff, you can tell. But for here, was it Tubisaria? Was his name? Fiji, the guy that did the suits, who built the suits.
Hang on, I get a name.
E.G. Tubisaria, I think it was. I know I'm pronouncing it wrong. But for him to just say, nah, we're not going to do stop motion. We're going to actually create suits, rubber latex suits that are going to be uncomfortable as hell, but
Yeah.
people are going to be in them and they're going to have range of
And
motion.
we're going to have these
and we're going to capture it.
set pieces of like refineries at the coast that probably were 2,000 square feet. And the guy's going to walk, wade around in the water tank and then come up onto the set and start stepping on stuff. And this guy over here is going to, with the Gomez Adams,
Okay.
is going to blow it up, and all of this happening simultaneously. We're going to string, make miniature electric grid, and they're going to walk through it, and it'll sparks and explosions and fire, and all the while there's a guy in a rubber suit walking through fire. I mean,
Okay, according to Wikizilla, the Shodagoji, the original suit for the 1954 movie, was modeled by Teizo Toshimitsu, Kanju and Yasue Yagi, and Eizo Kamai,
Okay.
nicknamed Chosen.
Yeah, so they built the suits.
so he had a quotation.
Yes, yeah, he did. He had a quotation name. So they built the suits, but I guess it was the other guy, the other gentleman, who was in charge of the special effects. So he didn't build the suits. He just said, "Okay, I'm the special effects guy, and here's what I want."
Well, then the performers who had to don these things. I mean, some of this stuff, like Rodan and King Ghidorah, are just cumbersome as hell.
Oh no, these were dangerous. These were like these guys got put in life-threatening situations.
Yeah.
Because I mean, in addition to all the heavy modeling and things like that that's on top of them, they're around fire, they're around smoke, and they're around stuff they got to pick up.
Exactly.
It's all these guys were put in some real life-threatening situations where, like, the suits become waterlogged and things like that. There were dozens of
Yeah, I doubt very seriously that
stories where
Godzilla's
these guys
feet
went
were
through
watertight, so I'm sure that it got pretty heavy after you waded
Yeah.
around in the ocean and knocked over a ship or two.
exactly.
So where are you at then, Cole, in terms of and I know this is the tough questions, but it's a fun question. So if you had to pick one, and we are asking you to pick one, which one of the Godzilla films would you say was the one that really did it for you as a kid?
54 to 2021.
Yeah.
I didn't even have to go, well, it was when I was a kid.
Mhm.
We were there's a gal across the street from us when we were growing up in Oak Cliff who would babysit. And I remember being in their living room watching TV, and this commercial came on for "Destroy All Monsters." And I was just like, must go now. And she's like, oh, you probably need to ask your parents to take you. And I'm like, no, I want to go to the Wynwood Theater and see Destroy All Monsters. Where's the paper? You go through and find which theater. It's at the Aquarius. We've got to go. It's throwing stuff out for people who grew up in Dallas. But I did actually eventually get to go see Destroy All Monsters and would seek it out wherever I could. I bought a bootleg Destroy All Monsters at a convention years ago because there was nobody was releasing this stuff. This was like you bought Destroy All Monsters and Story of Ricky and that god-awful Justice League TV, the roast and things like that, with Adam West and Burt Ward reprising their roles, among other, like Charlie Callis as Sinestro. I don't know. But then you realize Charlie Callis always looked like Sinestro, only paler. But yeah, think about it. He really was. But yeah, for me, Destroy All Monsters will always be at the top of the heap.
Yeah.
Because that was literally everybody in the catalog.
Mm-hmm.
And they brought in monsters you weren't familiar with. Manda,
Mm-hmm.
the serpent,
Mm-hmm.
or it's actually more like a Chinese dragon, because in later viewings I realized he's got little stumpy legs and little stumpy arms.
Mm-hmm.
But Manda was from a movie called The Mysterians. You get like 2.5 seconds of Varan the Unbelievable from Varan the Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
They just sort of mentioned Varan, and then he's gone. They just took a clip out of his movie of him flying.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Ibra, the giant shrimp. You had Kamakiris, the
Mm-hmm.
praying mantis. Spiga,
Mm-hmm.
the spider.
Yeah.
And, Spiga and Mothra were both examples of how Toho took liberties with the way spinnerets work for web spinning animals. They don't spit it out of their mouth, but
Yeah. It comes
it's a
from the other
little awkward if it's coming out the other end, like in nature. So you got to give them that conceit.
end. Yes.
But really, to me, that was every monster. You had Gorosaurus, who was taken from the King Kong movie,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where they had the Mecha Kong.
Yeah.
And that was just, it still fascinates me to this day.
Yeah. No,
Because it's old school.
Yeah.
And it's got everybody. I have to give props to, I haven't seen the whole thing yet, but I did see part of, what was the, it wasn't All Monsters Attack, because that was the original
Mm-hmm.
name of Destroy All Monsters, but
Mm-hmm.
was it Godzilla Final War, I think, where they had
Final
all,
Wars, yeah, 2004.
which was
Final Wars.
the
Mhm.
modern,
Yeah, modern
Destroy All
updated,
Monsters.
Yeah.
and the Japanese had adopted the awful Matthew Broderick franchise attempt, Godzilla. And he's actually known in the Toho vernacular as simply Zilla, which I think is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because that, to me, invokes, if you get a chance, look up Zilla,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was Fridays. I think it was the television show Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
They had a short film of Zilla, and
Okay.
it is a brilliant send-up of kaiju.
Nice.
But they took the Zilla,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that in this film, Zilla comes charging onto the screen, and then they just kill him.
Yeah.
And it was just like, F you, America. Godzilla belongs to us, and he belongs in a rubber suit.
That's what they were saying. All right. How
Yeah.
about you, Kazak? If you had to pick, which one of those Godzilla films, maybe King Kong
Well,
films,
For me,
fascinated your?
it wasn't so much the films as it was stuff like Super Sentai Power Rangers. But for me, what hooked me on the stuff was Rampage, the video game.
Ah,
Oh,
yeah.
Because
okay.
getting to be these monsters and destroying
Okay.
the cities, yeah, that's perfect.
Well, you,
Because when you're 9 or 10, that's what you want to do.
yeah, I actually tried to play Rampage against like a 10-year-old years ago, and I think I won one round,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
and pretty much was pummeled the rest of the game.
But yeah, it's a lot of the offshoots that came out of that stuff because you had Voltron and the Power Rangers and things like that. So it's more the offshoots of it that really got me into the franchise later,
Okay.
as to enjoy it. Because again, when you're a kid, you like the video games, you like the cartoons and things like that. But as you get older, you discover how cool the originating stories were and how great the monsters were.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think for me, there was so many, and every one of the ones y'all have mentioned I like, and I think the one that has a special place in my heart, and you know this one already, Kazak, because we talked a little bit about it,
Yep.
was when I went to go see Godzilla versus Megalon, right? So I went to this. I had no idea that there'd be a cool-ass robot named Jaguar in it. I just was going to go see a Godzilla movie, and so when I saw Megalon, who had these revolving spear-like hands that like drill hands, and had these like this insect mouth, and these, I was just like, look at this characterization of this.
Yeah.
I was like, Godzilla, get him! And then another monster shows up, and I'm like, oh, what the hell is he gonna do by himself? And so here the humans are cool because they create a robot that can
Exactly.
grow up and get huge size. And so when I
Yep.
saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, a cool robot who can join up, like Ant-Man can get huge. And so all of a sudden, when he's Giant Man, and so all of a sudden here he was, and then he had those antennas that were inside of his head that went out like
yeah,
that.
those little moth-looking antenna.
And then when he would fly, and it was so funny to see him fly, because whenever he needed to turn, it was like somebody turned the model like this.
Yes, exactly.
And he was like that whenever he turned, but it didn't matter.
He just
So
sort of
him
pivot
there,
in the air.
Yes, he just pivots in the air. And then them having that tag team fight, where I
Yes.
think that's where Jet Jaguar's holding up Megalon and Godzilla scoots across.
He does his first Captain Kirk
Yes.
flying
Yes.
leap and
I was
dragging his
done.
tail.
I
Yeah.
was so done. I was
Yep.
like, yes.
Ironically, we were watching Godzilla versus Megalon just yesterday with
No.
our niece
No.
and trying to introduce, and she would wander off during a lot of the human stuff scenes.
Yeah.
As we all do.
And
Yep.
you got to love that the leader of Seatopia is some smarmy PE coach from
Yeah.
like 1967.
Right.
He's this balding,
Mm-hmm.
chubby guy with a toga party look and
Right.
the tattoos he got during his years in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I thought that was.
But yeah, and the fact that Megalon, when flying,
Mm-hmm.
the carapace opens and you get the wings like a beetle,
Mm-hmm.
and then the two big drill hands are
Mhm.
then clasped together for more the most unaerodynamic animal,
Yes.
and is trying to like create an air wedge there.
Yep.
I was such a fan of that. And so to that end, it kind of brings us to a piece about this. And the piece would be suits versus CGI.
Oh yeah.
So where do you stand on that
Are
one,
you
Cole?
old
Suits
school?
versus CGI.
I love some of what's being done, with CGI, because they're taking the tools
Mm-hmm.
and adapting the characters to even more dynamic stature. Like, for example, in Godzilla King of the Monsters,
Mm-hmm.
Ghidorah's wings are like 3 miles. He's got
Yeah.
like a 3-mile wingspan.
Right.
They're gigantic. It would not
Mhm.
have worked in a practical
Mm-hmm.
puppet/suit.
Mm-hmm.
So they take advantage of the fact that they can become even more outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like any tool, I don't need a socket wrench if I'm hammering a nail.
Right.
And sometimes you spoke of the, brightening the color palette and expanding the cinematography in
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla versus Kong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the problem is very often CG is just turned over to a bunch of artists.
Yeah.
You need your cinematographer
Yeah.
to at least be there advising.
Mm-hmm.
If this was
Yeah.
real, if I had these creatures in front of me
Mm-hmm.
and I was setting the lensing, I would not do it this way. And a lot of times it seems like special effects just get turned over to the special effects guy and there's no filmmaker involved.
Yeah.
And it just becomes like a cartoon, like, oh, shift gears into cartoon mode. And so in many ways, because I grew up with the rubber suit,
Yeah.
it will always have a special place in my heart. And to
Mhm.
me, always seemed the more pure version of the kaiju.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I do appreciate that, the walls are all torn down. It's open season. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And at least they're trying to apply practical visual physics.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times CG stuff doesn't seem to respond to the real world properly. And I think that in more recent years, there's been a greater emphasis on, when a creature, if it's 300 feet tall, when it makes a footfall, it's not like in a video game. It
Mhm.
needs to have a physical effect on its surroundings, and its surroundings have to have a physical effect on it.
Totally. Totally. K-Zach, how about you? Which one? Where are you at in that debate?
I
Suit
think
or CGI?
early on, obviously, I'm going to say the suits.
Sure.
Because the modeling and the suits, that's the joy of these films. That's the B movie part of it that just, that I glom onto, that I will always be loyal to. But by the same token, CGI has gotten better.
Yes.
Because they when you have guys like, not so much Roland Emmerich, but, the guys who were in charge of the Slaves franchise, and Guillermo del Toro, who did phenomenal with Pacific Rim. I'm one of the defenders of Pacific Rim,
Yes.
because the fact that they created a scene that electrified the 11-year-old in me. When you have a mecha swinging a battleship like a sword against a kaiju, you're not going to get that to look real
Mm-hmm.
on a rubber suit and a model, but when they do it with CGI, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It wakes up your imagination going, I am now a kid again. I'm 11 years old, and I am in awe. Thank you so much. For me, I see the joy of CGI and the fact that it's come so far from 2004 Final Wars to now. They've gotten so much better, and the fact that, like I said, when you could see what they were able to do with the brighter color palettes and things like that, with real fight choreographers and things like that, because I got to believe they have guys under green screens and
telemetry suits and the
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
Now I've got to believe that finally they've caught up to how to make this work all together. So it's come a long way. I'm still pro rubber suit model.
Yeah.
But again, like Cole, I'm with you in the fact that it's come so far.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
There's a lot to go.
Well, see there, and we're all on the same page. Because I feel the exact same way about that. With the rubber suits, I think it is the nostalgia piece of it. Because even as a kid, you knew it was a rubber suit, but you didn't care.
Yeah.
And you were just like, yeah, let me just see what they're going to do with this. And even though, like, there's a time where Godzilla does a shuffle before he throws a punch, just like they were copying Muhammad Ali at the time,
Yeah.
that shuffle thing. That was just great to see Godzilla do a shuffle
Yeah.
and then punch, one of those monsters. So it's one of those things. But I would say, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
we've got to get them up against the electric lines and rope a dope.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, I think, the contrast. So with the new movie, Godzilla versus Kong, to your point, Kazak, and also yours, Cole, there's a scene in there where they fight during the daytime, which then, if you don't have good CGI, it's going to show up bad. They use Dark Knight scenes to hide bad CGI.
Exactly.
Just go look at the Wonder Woman, the new Wonder Woman 84, that fight scene with Cheetah. That's absolutely horrible.
Yep.
Right? Horrible, right? But here they said, no, we're brave enough. We're going to put this first fight out in the broad daylight.
Which is really, if you look back at the Tojo films, most of the time Godzilla's like, it's noon.
Yep.
Every time he fights somebody, he's out there. He and
Fighting a day in Monster Island, man.
Yeah.
Get your Mai Tai at 7 and you're good.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we are out of time. We got to go ahead and wrap this up. We do need to thank Cole for coming
Yes,
in today.
we do. We definitely want to, Cole. So
Absolutely.
thank you for hanging back and talking. Kaijus with us. That's always going to be a good topic, and we need more than maybe 2 or 3 hours, but just not today, right?
Yeah,
We-
not today. No, I am always on board for talking about kaiju and the Toho films, and
Yeah.
I used to have a massive collection of Bandai kaiju, and I'm always all over it.
That's
and just for people who just can't get enough of this, Mezco is coming out with 2 sets of Destroy All Monsters action figures.
Oh,
They look insane. So do a little
Wow.
poking around
Yep.
online.
Wow.
That's the joy of technology. It caught up with the toys.
Exactly. Oh my God. And they've got, some of them have different heads, so you can choose what you want the character to look like. But they're making an action figure of Gorosaurus.
yeah.
They're doing God's work.
That's that time.
Manila.
It's time.
Son of
Manila. Oh,
Godzilla.
that's
So
that's time.
They ain't cheap, but they're worth it.
Yes, sir. So who do you want to give a shout out to as we close out for the day? Who's your shout out to?
I want to give a shout out to my co-host for Hey Kids Comics and all the toys, who I probably shout out to every time on the show, but I don't remember. Thank you for keeping the podcasting fire burning long after it should have been extinguished. But because of things like Hey Kids Comics, the Rancor Pit Live was born, and Isle of Toys, which then spawned All the Toys, which is our other audio podcast. So, Andy's just been gangbusters, and we both learned that there are days when you just don't feel like doing this, but then when you get started, it changes everything. So
No, that's awesome. How about you, Kazak? Who you shouting out to?
I do want to shout out everyone here at DoubtlessOnAir.com. That includes Jansen and Kat, who give us a home here every week. And, of course, we do want to shout out all the other shows here on Dallas On Air, including Fan and Wife and Figments and Explain Mysteries podcast, both with Colleen and Eddie Medina. We do also want to go ahead and shout out shows like 12 Pack, Best for Business, Say Something, all the great shows here. Just tune in to DallasOnAir.com. You can find something. You can always find us on demand on DallasOnAir.com. And, of course, friend us on Facebook. Find us wherever we are. Like I said, we're DallasOnAir.com. We're glad to be here, man.
That's awesome. So I want to shout out to my good buddy Lauren Wiedauer, Sean Presley, Mad Mel, Daniel Mesa, the Film Samurai himself, Carlos Salinas, Stephanie Crane, Brandy and Barry Austin. They're good friends of mine. They watch the show from time to time. And Troy Ross and Scott Laney and Sandra in Indiana. So that's it, boys and girls. That's our show for today. We will be back actually next week. We're going to do our special Oscar edition, which won't be special because there are no special movies released for 2020.
Way
But
to
we'll-
sell
we'll-
it, PJ.
But we'll fade through it, and we'll show you maybe what it would look like if maybe we came up with. No, we won't do that. But we will talk about it. We will say, hey, if you had to pick something, what would you pick? And so that's what that will be. So we'll see you next week when we talk about the Oscars. Peace.